very, I think, historical and propitious occasion for DePauw University. As you know, we have had a search committee looking for a new president for, I guess, about 14 months now. And there were times when there was some impatience with the speed. I think all of you and all of us in DePauw will be glad that we took time and deliberations in the selection for the gentleman that I'm about to introduce to you is, in my opinion, the opinion of the board and those who've met him on the campus, a great asset. It will be a great asset. He's a man who understands liberal arts university, has had experience in education, has had administrative experience. But I think more than that, he has a commitment to the ideals and building on the heritage of a great university. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you the new president-elect, effective February 1st of DePauw University, Dr. Richard Franklin Rosser, who comes to us from Albion, where he spent 3 years as dean of the university. Prior to that, with the Air Force Academy in political science. His intellectual background is set out in his writings, been a prolific writer in the area of politics. He has been a teacher, has been an administrator, and I'm very proud to introduce him to you now. Dr. Richard Franklin Rosser, whom I'm sure all of you and on the campus will know him as he likes to be called, Dick Rosser. Congratulations, Dick. Congratulations, DePauw University.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a distinct pleasure to be here and to assume this position as president of DePauw University. I've known about DePauw for many years. I might mention a few things which I think would be of interest. I grew up in a little town in the western part of Ohio, just about 10 or 15 miles from the Indiana border. I spent several very memorable summers at Culver Summer School, where I learned to sail, and that's one of the passions I still have. I then went to Ohio Wesleyan University, the great Methodist college in Ohio, and that's where I met my wife, and we then had, shall we say, a temporary period of 20 years in the Air Force, but some 14 years of that I also spent in higher education at the Air Force Academy. I decided to leave the Air Force and to stay in higher education, so the most natural place for me to go or to come was back to the Middle West and to another Methodist school, Albion College in Michigan. So in many respects, this transition to DePauw is a very natural kind of transition. Ohio Wesleyan and Albion and DePauw are really the three great schools, the Methodist colleges, in this tri-state area. They are very similar in terms of the kinds of students, in terms of the kinds of orientations of their academic programs, and I might say the problems are similar as well. So my wife and I already feel, I should say, very comfortable, even though obviously we've only had a few opportunities to visit DePauw and the campus. But it is an absolutely first-class institution, and it's a distinct pleasure to have a chance to work with that institution and to lead it over the next number of years. I would be most happy now to answer any questions you might want to put to me. Yes?
Dr. Rosser, do you have any special goals for DePauw University? Anything in particular that you'd like to emphasize and work on?
I think I would start by saying that the institution already is an excellent institution. And I think the first goal would be to maintain this kind of excellence. There is no question that in the next 10 or 20 years, many private liberal arts colleges are going to face a difficult time. I'm sure you've all read about the increasing costs of education at these colleges and the difficult financial problems facing these colleges. So I would say the first goal is to maintain the kind of excellence which already exists there. Now, the next goal, I would say, is to somehow improve the academic program, to help the faculty maintain the kind of status it already has, but to help the faculty become even better. And the primary goal, of course, would be to give the best possible education, which we can give to the students. There is no question that that obviously is the central aim of any institution. It's got to be. And I'm very impressed with the students I have already met at DePauw. I've heard good things about the students' body for a number of months. And as you can imagine, I have done considerable checking. I wanted to do this. The search process has been a long one, but this is as it should be, because it is a coming together, you might say, of an institution and a particular individual. And because of all of this, we do feel, I think, very comfortable with the kind of school and the kinds of opportunities that we're going to face.
Dr. Ross, in view of your comment about small colleges, how do you suppose a small college, generally, can compete with a monolithic, cheap state school?
I think these colleges have competed over the years, and very well indeed, because there are certain kinds of differences. Size is one. There's no question about that. You simply have a different kind of education, I think, on a smaller campus. It's possible on a smaller campus to have a genuine academic community in the sense that you have administrators who know students, you have faculty who know students, and in turn the students know the faculty and the administrators. That kind of thing is rather difficult to do on a larger campus. Secondly, you find on many of the larger campuses, obviously an emphasis on graduate schooling as well as on undergraduate schooling. Whereas on a campus such as DePauw, you have an emphasis on undergraduate preparation alone. And I think if you talk to students who are at larger universities and ask them to compare their experience, if, for example, they may have attended a smaller school at some point, they can relate to you the difference in this kind of education. It's simply, as you say, it's a difference of scale, and one of the reasons, of course, for the scale, it's necessary to have that kind of scale, a much larger university, if you're going to have these kinds of economies. There's no question that the kind of education you have at a smaller school is higher cost because it just has a certain kind of ingredient that you will not find at a larger school. Another very important element, I think, over the years has been that at a small college, we are talking essentially about a residential college, about students who reside in this community. They normally do not commute. And the administration and the faculty of a smaller college is concerned and has been over the years in the full development of the individual, not simply in the academic program that the student might take, but in trying to help the student work through, shall we say, his or her religious beliefs, to develop a philosophy of life, to develop an ethical code, to somehow come to grips with the kinds of challenges that they're going to be facing in the years to come. So it simply is a different kind of education.
But as far as the parent is concerned, though, it may be here in the future that the cost would be the number one determinant. Is there anything a small college can do to try and offset that to the parent, the individual that has to pay for it?
Well, I think, for example, there are a number of possibilities for financial aid, which quite often are not fully understood by parents. I think you will find at a school such as DePauw that you may have some 60% of your students receiving financial aid of one kind or another. I think the second thing that the small college must do is to attempt to articulate this difference that you asked me about earlier between the large university and the small school. And after this difference is articulated, parents may decide, well, we still don't think it's worth the money, and it may not be. in that particular case, and some students may prefer a larger university. There are obvious advantages. If you take, for example, Indiana University, there is no question that that is a great institution. There are many, many more cultural activities going on. And at first glance, the student might think, well, there's just so much more variety. Although I do hear from students who go to larger schools that they don't have time to take advantage of these opportunities in any case. So that the difference there might not be more apparent, or more apparent than real. But I think there's no question that we have not articulated as well as we might the advantages of the small college, and we have not put these in proper perspective. Another problem I think that the small colleges are facing, particularly the liberal arts colleges, they're facing this question, well, what do the liberal arts really prepare you for? Should you go to a school which has a much more specific program in terms of career preparation or vocational training? On the other hand, we now know that many people are selecting 2 careers, 3 careers, 4 careers, and that the kinds of skills that they need to have this kind of flexibility are the very kinds of skills that the liberal arts colleges always have emphasized. The ability to think, the ability to analyze, the ability to write, to speak, the ability simply to handle new kinds of problems in different kinds of situations. And therefore, this is the emphasis which I think should be indeed talked about and certainly better articulated than may have been true in the past. The liberal arts colleges simply cannot do everything, and there has been considerable pressure on these colleges to develop more and more specific programs. But we have to keep this kind of preparation in balance, and the primary thing is to get a good, solid, broad liberal arts background. The more specialized training should be done in the graduate school, but that should come then at the graduate school level.
What are you suggesting that the small colleges maybe as a group should engage in a PR blitz of some sort?
Well, I don't know about a PR blitz, but I think there should be some attempt to clearly articulate the relative advantages of a small liberal arts college in contrast to the advantages of a larger kind of institution. This really, I think, is the difference which we are talking about. And the liberal arts colleges have been reluctant over the years to do this kind of thing. But it may be time, simply for the benefit of all, for the benefit of the public as a matter of fact, to try to carefully analyze the differences between various kinds of schools.
Would you see something like recruiting scholars, like big schools seem to recruit athletes?
I would see this as a possibility in the sense of trying to show the various advantages for a student who is interested in a good academic program, of the very beneficial one-to-one contact between the student and the professor, which is the real essence of the liberal arts college. And there's no question that this kind of contact will best prepare that student for work, shall we say, at the graduate school level. Incidentally, I might add that many of the larger schools indeed now are beginning to recruit scholars just as they do athletes. And I would hope that the small colleges, shall we say, could have their share of it. Yes?
To get this broad liberal arts background that you're talking about, do you think that it would be right for DePauw to reinstate more stringent graduation requirements? Do you think that the way we've been, the group distribution requirements, Dr. how does Albion do that? Do you think DePauw will change?
A number of colleges now, I should say a number of faculties across the nation, are beginning to re-examine what they did to their academic programs in the 60s. There was enormous pressure during the 60s to de-emphasize specific requirements. and to turn these into distribution requirements, meaning rather than taking specific courses, the student could select from among a group. Some schools indeed did away with all specific requirements. And I think we went overboard during that period, because what we were really saying was that, well, this should be a student decision. But yet, are students really prepared to make this kind of a selection? I would argue, and I suppose many faculty would, that students are not prepared to make this kind of choice, and that's why they are students. And it may be time for faculties to try to come to grips with this question of redefining what is the essence of the liberal arts. What do we mean by preparing young men and women to be educated young men and women? Aren't there certain central courses or concepts or skills which should be emphasized and indeed required? This is going to take a lot of creative thinking on the part of faculties. It's going to, I should say, take a more sophisticated understanding perhaps on the part of students of what really might be best for them in the long run. Because the initial feeling on the part of many students will be a reluctance to be tied down. Why do I have to take that course in history? Why do I have to take that course in English? Don't I know enough already about these particular subjects? So we may be in for a period in a number of schools in which we are trying to redefine what we really mean by the liberal arts. And I would hope that DePauw might begin this kind of an investigation.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Dr. Russell,